class, and welcome to Notes 3.5, Decimals and Fractions as Percents. We've already spent a little time working on flipping back and forth between decimals, fractions, and percents. So this is the final part of this review. We don't have any vocabulary for today, just one objective, which is to write decimals and fractions as percents. So let's start with our first teacher example. Write the decimals as percents. Now, we talked about when moving a percent to a decimal, we moved it to the left because we were making it into a smaller number. Now, taking a decimal and turning percent, we go the opposite direction because we're making it into a larger number. So we move 2 spaces to the right this time. So we're going to move from here on the other side of the 0 and then the other side of the 9. 2 spaces to the right, and we end up with 109%. Next problem, notice there's only 1 space to move. So when we move a second space, we have to add a 0, which is the same thing again as multiplying by 100. We add that 0, and we end up with 30%. Notice I dropped the 0 in front of the decimal because it's no longer needed. We wouldn't say, oh, 30%. We simply say 30%. Okay, why don't you go ahead and try it? Writing these decimals as percents. Every time you need to move the decimal 2 places to the right, don't forget. Okay, welcome back. Let's take a look and see how you did. Moving 2 places to the right, it ends up on the other side of the 8, and then of course we need to drop the 0 so that it is not there anymore. Moving on number 2, notice we need to add another 0 so that we can move 2 spaces to the right, and then we drop the 0 in front with 50%. Moving 2 spaces to the right on number 3, we need to add another 0 after the 2. We end up with 920%. I don't know where the percent sign is there. And number 4, moving it 2 spaces to the right. Now notice when it moves 2 spaces to the right on number 4, there's still a decimal point because it doesn't go all the way. So we end up with 40 and 1/10%. Okay, so go ahead, make sure you've got all the correct answers on there, and let's move on to teacher example 2. Okay, writing the fractions, write fractions as percents. Now this takes a little more work. There's 2 ways we can do this. We can either change the fraction into a new fraction with a denominator of 100, which is very easy as long as the current denominator is divisible by 100, or we can just divide. -2 divided by 5, which you've spent a lot of time with. So I'm going to review the other way. 5 times 20 is going to give us 100. So -2 times 20 will give us -40. -40 over 100 is the same thing as saying -40%. So our answer is -40%. Now, 600 is larger than 100, so we need to move the opposite direction. Divide both numerator and denominator by 6. 78 divided by 6 is 13. And of course, 13 over 100 is the same thing as saying 13%. So go ahead and try student practice. When I demonstrate it, I'm going to demonstrate it using the division method so you can see both ways. But again, if you want to take these numbers and multiply them by something that'll make 100, you can do that. That'll work on all of these except for number 8, because the denominator of 8 will not go into 100 evenly. So be careful on that one. Okay, welcome back. On number 5, you could have either multiplied both of these by 10 or done a simple division problem. Either way, you would have ended up with 0 and 7/10. And then we're going to go ahead and turn 0 and 7/10 into a percent. Okay, so now taking a look, we've moved our decimal 2 places. We end up with 70%. Problem number 6, again, you can multiply both of them by 4 or divide 25 into 11, and we'll end up with 44, which is the same thing as 44%. Number 7, we can multiply both of those by 2, or we can simply divide, and we end up with 6%. Now number 8, again, I warned you about this one. You cannot multiply 8 by anything, any whole number to get 100. And if you're trying to find a decimal, sometimes you'll spend all day working on it. So it's easiest just to divide, and you end up with the decimal of 8,750 thousandths, which is going to turn into 87 5/10%. So again, when you're multiplying that denominator to try and make 100, that only works if the denominator is divisible by 100. Okay, last teacher example. We have a ordering problem where you're ordering the numbers from least to greatest. A survey of teenagers on Saturdays had the following results. 7/20ths go to the beach, 21/100ths go to the friend's house, and 28 and 2/10% go to the mall. Order the numbers from least to greatest. There are two ways to do this. One method is to turn them all into percents. 7/20ths is going to be 35 over 100, which is 35%. 21/100ths is going to be 21%. And then, of course, 28 and 2/10 is already in percent form. So now we go ahead and put them in order from least to greatest in percent form. But remember, we need to always turn them back into their original form for the answer. So there we have it in their original form. Another method is to turn them all into decimals. And again, they're both going to be about the same amount of work, so it's not going to make much difference. And of course, moving our decimal 2 places to the left this time. Then again, you put the decimal forms in order, and then you need to go back and rewrite the original numbers, which is going to be here. Okay, so hopefully you did pretty well with that. If you need a little review of anything, please rewatch the video. When you're finished, you can go on to the quiz. Make sure you copy down the problems, follow those rules. Again, go back to the video if you needed a little extra review. Okay, good luck.